Hi, I'm Julie Neckley, and I wanted to make a quick video about what I consider to be the most dangerous house of the zodiac, which is the house of the servant. Just thinking about it fills me with so much exhaustion that it's almost hard to make the video, but basically the house of the servant is, some people call it the house of work, but it's really the house of thankless labor. There's two houses of work, the 6th house and the 10th house. The difference is that the 10th house is ruled by Saturn, and that's a place where your work accrues over time. You're credited with your work. And so over time, you gain a more and more secure place in society through working. The house of the servant is the reverse. You work hard, but you aren't credited with your work, and you don't build any structure of safety around yourself for doing the work. You don't gain over time. In fact, you might decrease your safety, your position in society over time, either to like exhaustion or just being devalued. Because when you end up in the servant's role, you're almost always going to be in a devaluation process, even if it's not immediately apparent. Okay, so why would God dedicate a whole house of the zodiac just to thankless labor? Because this is really a house where you grow in extreme ways. It's ruled by the sign of Virgo, which I consider to be the most intelligent sign of the zodiac. Why? Because Virgo is the one who's solving problems. It's kind of like a housewife or something. It doesn't matter what the problem is. If it's like a toilet that won't work, if it's a car that won't work, if it's a personal problem, an emotional problem, a math problem, she has to figure it out, right? It's like she's constantly dealing with the full range of problems, and she's having to deal with them with patience, without losing her temper, without receiving any credit. So not only is she like growing mentally, she's also growing emotionally. She's building patience, she's building perseverance, she's building understanding. And the same goes for anyone who's like in the role of the servant. They have to deal with whatever problems arise. They can't be like, oh, that's not my thing, I won't deal with that. So they develop an intelligence that's way more versatile. They're constantly managing like 500 things in their mind at once. So that builds up their intelligence. They have to like have all these virtues, all these emotional virtues, because they aren't allowed to lose it. They aren't allowed to lose their temper. So there's no house that really develops us as people more than the house of the servant. It's what makes a person a good partner, really, is like how much of that servant energy they have, like how much they can step into different roles when needed, how much they have these virtues to deal with problems that aren't their own. Are they willing to work hard for something that doesn't benefit them, that only benefits somebody else, Somebody who has none of that energy they're not that great of a person. So it's like a huge house for self-development. However, it's a very dangerous house in terms of long-term safety. So you always have to consider like how much of your effort are you putting into the house of the servant versus how much effort are you putting into the house of the 10th house, the house of career. Because putting your energy to the house and the servant is pretty much like putting your money into a slot machine. You can only put in what you can afford to lose. Because the energy that you put into servitude, you aren't getting that back. You aren't going to get credit for it. It's not going to necessarily benefit you in the long run. There's a few exceptions. But generally speaking, all you're going to gain from it is knowledge, skills, and character, which is great, but it's not enough to keep you safe over the long term. Because the servant will eventually break. And when they break, their value goes to zero because they didn't build anything that technically belongs to them. Like there's like the stereotype of like basically like the housewife gets sick and then her husband leaves her. Which is the thing that happens because when she can't perform anything, she lost her value. If like a factory worker gets injured, he's lost his value. He's now nothing, And some people get really stuck in this role because the servants get little things, they get like praise and stuff. And when you're the servant, you develop a servant mindset where you're like, ooh, 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 praise. And you sometimes fail to realize that praise is not it's not anything that lasts. The praise can disappear at any moment, and it will disappear the first moment that praising you becomes inconvenient. Because in the long run, nobody wants to value the servant, right? Because the people who are benefiting from the servant don't want to feel that the people who benefit from the servant's labor, it's simply not in their best interest for the servant to matter as much as they matter, for the servant to be as intelligent as them, for the servant to be as valuable as them, right? Because if the servants were seen that way, then suddenly you'd be like, well, why is that person your servant? You're kind of a jerk for using that person as your servant, right? So they need servants to be less valuable than them. So the servants can be assured that no matter what they contribute, they won't ever matter enough. They won't ever matter enough that their value will outlast them breaking, basically. And they might be appreciated heavily in the moment, because appreciating someone is a very easy way of paying them. But if there's no socially acknowledged way that your labor and your contribution is ultimately attributed to you, then you are in the dangerous role of servant. So it's basically like, the beautiful thing about servitude is by wanting to serve something beyond yourself, it really carries you outside of your box. It helps you to grow in ways you would never have grown if you were selfish. But the danger is that by being unselfish, you're ultimately, no matter what it seems like in the present moment, you're ultimately positioning yourself to be dangerously discarded. And reasons will be created for why your discarding was just and necessary, and in the end, no one will really care. Because just like we don't remember who built the pyramids, it's like, well, who cares? They're all dead anyway. But the thing is, that process happens in real life. It's like the contributions of a servant that might get praised in the moment will quickly be forgotten and reattributed to somebody else, right? So you will be considered to have done nothing. And then that can put you in a really dangerous position, where you don't have any social value that you can use to get more opportunities. So, I guess it's just a matter of spending enough time in the house of servitude in order to get intelligent, but don't spend so much time in there that you end up in the gutter. I'm sorry, I feel like my brain isn't working very well right now, because just thinking about the subject is so stressful that I can almost not function. But yeah, that's the house of servitude, the most dangerous house of the zodiac. Thanks. I'm Julie Necklaire. Bye.